In this video, we're going to cover the needs and wants. These are the underlying assumptions for all of the information that you're seeing here. So, just because we have food records in our food inventory, it doesn't necessarily mean the system knows yet, how much time that will provide you with sustenance for, right? How many days on hand of calories you have. It also wouldn't know, how many servings you have on hand for each category based on the, your expected number of servings that you and your family would eat in any given day. So it needs some assumptions. So, it's important for me to show you the nuts and bolts of the food inventory sheet, because that really is the foundation upon which everything else is built. But we also need to go into these needs and wants sheets to add some assumptions. So I'm going to go into the needs sheet first, and this is our calorie requirements. This is your family's calorie requirements per day. So all you do is you add names of each member of your family, and you add the number of calories that you expect to eat or want to store and want to be able to eat per day for each of those people. And then that automatically will provide you with a total number of calories for your whole family. So for my family, we'll plan to eat 6,700 calories per day. And it's as simple as that. You just add the names of the people in your family and the number of calories that you expect each of them to eat per day. So I'm going to go back to the dashboard. And that's pretty much a set it and forget it type of thing. You really don't have to go back into that needs sheet. Now, the next sheet that I want to cover is the wants sheet. This is equally as important, and it really drives this graph here, which has been so valuable to me as I've identified gaps in my preps, and I've shored up those gaps, or some of those gaps. So I'm going to go into the servings per day wants sheet. So this sheet, you can see, has a list of the categories. Okay, this is a locked column, as you can see here, so you're not going to be able to edit these categories, but these will correspond with the categories on your food inventory sheet, which will correspond with the categories that you indicated that you wanted to be able to track when you provided your setup form or setup questionnaire. The one column that you're going to use in this sheet is the expected servings per day per person column. Okay, so for each category, you're going to indicate how many servings you want to plan to eat per person per day. So beans, I'm going to plan on eating 1 serving per person per day when I'm relying on this, the food I've put back. Beverages, this is things like, it might be coffee, it might be tea, things like that. It might be like water flavorings, like lemonade, what have you, right? So that's how I categorize my food. I talked about categorization in a previous video. How you think about your food may be different than how I think about my food, but based on what I categorize as beverage, I'm going to plan to consume 1.5 servings per day per person. Breakfast, and so on down the list. So some of these have much higher number of servings per person per day, like ingredients. For me, ingredients might mean salt or baking soda, baking powder, cooking ingredients, things that you wouldn't eat on their own. And for example, down here I have spice and seasoning. So, all of the spices that I've put back, I'm planning to eat a fair amount per person per day. This might actually be too much, but in this next column, you can see the number of days of servings that I have on hand based on that expected amount per day. So in this case, I have at 7 servings per person per day. I have 449 days worth of servings. So I've got plenty. And then there's other categories. This is like long-term food storage from like Augustin Farms, for example. And 6-month supply buckets. And, I plan to eat a quarter serving, or what this means is one serving every 4 days. And at that rate, this particular category will last 279 days. So I kind of got into this next column, but I was trying to tie the two together here. This is a calculated column. It's locked. You're not going to be able to update these fields, but it shows you, beans, I've got more than enough to cover my 10 months worth of food that I have on hand. Whereas dessert, I only have 122 days. It's important to note here that the numbers that you see in this column, stored days of servings, directly translates to the graph, this graph in the dashboard. So as you can see, beans is the top category, sugar, sweeteners, ingredients, pasta and sauce. In terms of servings, right? That directly correlates to the numbers that you see in this column. So as you can see, beans is the top category, spice and seasoning, sugar and sweeteners. So these numbers are feeding, so to speak, this graph on the dashboard, which again is about trying to work toward balance, right? And I mentioned in another video, we're trying to get to, we're striving toward this idea of perfection, of perfect balance, or every category being at 100%. And in this wants sheet, what that would look like is, every category that you are using would be at the same number of days on hand, right? So that's essentially the idea. That would represent balance. Now, when we have categories in the red, that represents imbalance. Now, you might say, well, I'm okay with not having balance for dessert. But what you'd want to do in that case is actually change the expected servings per day per person for that category. So, instead of one serving every 4 days, I might want to change this to one serving every 10 days. And now you can see I'm at 305 days of serving. So at one serving every 10 days, that's not a lot, right? In terms of, your mentality, your state of mind, you need to be able to eat food that you enjoy if you want to maintain a good attitude, good state of mind. But, I'm just showing you how to use this sheet, and what this does by lowering the amount of servings per day per person, it brings this number of stored days of servings up. Now, what that does on the dashboard, you'll notice, is now dessert is now here. It's no longer at the bottom of the list. It's now here, right? So it looks like I've got 100%, which means at that, one serving per 10 days, I'm in balance. Okay, so that's what that means. But you want to be able to not only maintain balance here on this graph, but you want to make sure that the total number of calories per day is reasonable for your family, and that you're eating in a manner that you feel good about, that's acceptable to you. For me, that seems a little low. I think I want to shoot for, like I had here, 0.25. That's what I'm thinking is good balance for my family. So, that's why when I say this and go back to the graph, this graph shows me I'm out of balance. This is a gap for me, and somewhere that I want to focus my my dollars and my energy on. Now, the categories where you have 0, and it's fine to have 0. If you don't categorize your food with that particular category, you're going to leave that 0, and you're just going to see that this is going to say enter the number of units, but you don't have to. If you don't want to categorize your food with that category, just leave it 0. And this last column is basically taking the average number of calories per serving for that category, and it's determining, based on the number of servings per day that you're planning to eat, that's how many calories from that category you'll get per day per person. So, this one serving of beans will provide 95 calories worth of energy for us. And, you get the total at the top. So 1,812 calories per day per person on average is fairly reasonable when you take into consideration, myself and my wife and my daughters. So this is a really important sheet. So you need to make sure to fill out your needs and your wants. And then that becomes the basis for the graphs on the dashboard. And once you start adding your food, these graphs will start to make sense. And the bar graph down below will also start to make sense. So that's it for this video. I hope it was helpful for you. In the next video, we're going to go and talk about the supplies and equipment sheets and reports here.